let's just ask a really simple question, but one that has some, well, some pretty huge implications. What would actually happen, step by step, if the entire internet just went dark for 7 days? And this isn't some crazy sci-fi movie plot. This is a thought experiment that's really grounded in how our world is actually built today.
And wow, this quote it nails it, right? The internet isn't just another utility like electricity or water. No, we've gone way past that. It's become the fundamental architecture of our civilization, those load-bearing walls holding absolutely everything up.
Okay, so what happens when you suddenly rip out those load-bearing walls? What does that first week actually look like? For us, for our money, for society itself, let's really break it down. All right, let's dive into the first 24 hours. We're calling this the silence and the shock. Because the moment the connection breaks, you'd think it would start with a bang, right? But no, it starts with a quiet, creeping silence that slowly turns into mass confusion. You know, what's so fascinating is how our brains process this. For the first few hours, it's just an annoyance, a glitch. You reboot your router, you toggle airplane mode, you just kind of wait for some invisible tech person somewhere to fix the problem. But then, around hour 6, things get weird. The secondary systems start to fail. Cell networks completely jam up because everyone is trying to call at the same time. And then, as the day ends, the real-world stuff hits. Your navigation app? Dead. The traffic lights, which you probably didn't know are all networked, they go haywire, causing total gridlock. So by the end of day 1, the feeling isn't really panic, not yet. It's just this deep, heavy confusion.
Okay, so moving into the second day, this is where things get real. The abstract digital problem, this thing on our screens, it smacks right into the physical world. This is where money, food, and fear completely take over.
We wake up on day 2 and bam, a terrifying truth hits us. Most of our money isn't actually real. It's just a number on a server somewhere. And the digital tunnel that verifies your credit card, your bank balance, it's gone. ATMs, they're just useless bricks now. Banks can't give you cash because they have no way of proving you even have any. Of course, this triggers a mad dash for physical cash, but even that only works for as long as stores actually have something on their shelves to sell.
And that leads directly to this next crisis. The phrase here says it all, a cardiac arrest. Our whole global supply chain, everything from food to medicine, runs on this just-in-time system. Your local supermarket probably only has about 3 days worth of food, and it relies on constant automated internet orders to restock. Well, when those orders stop, the whole system's heart just stops beating. The trucks don't roll because their digital orders never arrived.
Naturally, this kicks off massive panic buying. And it's really important to understand this isn't calculated hoarding. This is a pure, reactive, lizard brain fear response. You see empty shelves and you just start grabbing things you don't even need. Canned goods you hate, maybe dog food when you don't even have a dog. What you're really trying to buy is just a tiny, fleeting feeling of security in a world that suddenly lost all its rules.
So by day 2 and heading into day 3, this is where we go from personal problems, my phone doesn't work, to the failure of these massive invisible systems that are running everything in the background.
Just stop and think about this number for a second. 7 hours. That's the average amount of time each of us spends online, every single day. Our brains are literally rewired for that constant drip of dopamine, the notifications, the endless scrolling. So when you suddenly cut that off, an entire population basically goes into a state of collective psychological withdrawal, all at once.
So how do we react? Well, there are kind of 2 big ideas here. On one hand, you have the descent view. This argues that the dopamine crash leads to irritability, aggression, and paranoia. The information vacuum gets filled with wild, dangerous rumors. But then there's the restoration view, which suggests something else, difficult for sure, but ultimately adaptive rebalancing. We start to form tighter local groups with family and neighbors, and gossip, for better or for worse, it becomes the main news network. Either way, our entire reality shrinks down to what we can physically see and hear.
And by day 3, the stuff we never, ever think about starts to break. Water treatment plants shut down because their remote monitoring systems are offline. These huge, high-tech tractors, they just sit in the fields because they need to connect to the cloud for their GPS to work. And maybe the scariest part? Pharmacies. They can't access any of our digital prescriptions. So when pharmacists lock their doors to prevent looting, the civil unrest isn't from people trying to steal TVs, it's from people who are desperate to get their insulin or heart medication.
So now we're at day 4, and the chaos, it starts to settle a bit. But what replaces it is a completely new kind of social order. The whole rulebook gets thrown out. The very definition of what has value, what status means, it all gets turned upside down. I mean, just look at this. It's a total flip-flop of who has power. Your digital influence, your followers, your online brand, it all becomes completely worthless overnight. The person who's a genius at optimizing algorithms, suddenly that skill means nothing. Instead, a whole new elite emerges, the invisible class. We're talking about mechanics, nurses, electricians, farmers. Anyone who can do something practical with their hands becomes incredibly valuable. Your status isn't about who you are online anymore. It's about what you can physically do for the people standing right in front of you. And right along with this, a whole new economy just bubbles up from the ground up. First, digital money fails. Then, cash gets its brief moment in the sun. But as soon as the stores are empty, the real economy takes over. Barter. Tangible things, fuel, canned food, batteries, that's the new money. And finally, services themselves become currency. You trade your skill as a mechanic for a bag of rice. The economy becomes direct, tangible, and deeply personal again. You know, as we get to the end of the week, something really weird and kind of incredible starts to happen. The initial shock, the panic, it starts to fade away. And what replaces it is adaptation and this strange sort of analog renaissance. Because here's the thing about people. We are problem solvers. We have to be. So without the global network, we start inventing new, smaller ones. Ham radio operators, they become the new internet service providers, slowly relaying news. Community message boards drawn on chalkboards pop up in town squares. People start writing and delivering newsletters by hand. And that last point, man, that's powerful. The speed of truth slows from the speed of light down to the speed of a bicycle. Information becomes slower and more local, yeah, but maybe more deliberate too. And think about it. When you take away all that passive consumption, the endless scrolling, the binge watching, the constant stream of content, what's left? Well, you have to do something. People start creating again. They play music, they repair things, they cook elaborate meals from scratch. Our attention spans, which were shattered into a million little pieces, they start to heal. We remember how to actually focus on one thing. And that brings us to day 7, the end of our week. And no, it's not the apocalypse. It's not the end of the world. But it is the end of the world as we knew it. A new and radically different normal has set in. So what does this new normal actually feel like? Well, it's like a fever has finally broken. That frantic, compulsive need to check your phone is just gone. It's replaced by a kind of phantom ache, but the compulsion is gone. Face-to-face interaction is now the default. And other people? They're no longer just avatars online or comments you can ignore. They're real, and they're absolutely necessary for your survival.
I think when you boil it all down, the most optimistic lesson from this whole thought experiment is this. Human society is actually incredibly resilient. We don't just collapse into chaos. We reorganize. We find new ways to communicate, new ways to trade, and new ways to build communities. Which, I guess, leaves us with one last really big question to chew on. In losing our constant digital connection to the entire world, all its noise and all its data, would we finally be forced to reconnect with the physical reality that's right in front of us? Our neighborhoods, our skills, and each other? It's definitely something to think about.